When I was a young teenager, some time ago, now I'm 50, so this was close to 40 years ago, I was a math student in the former Soviet Union, and our math teacher told us this was the time when the two great chess players were competing to become world champions. Both were from the Soviet Union, Karpov and Kasparov. So our math teacher told us that there are four ways to hope for the outcome, not two. One may hope that Kasparov or Karpov wins, but he could also hope that Kasparov or Karpov loses, meaning the difference is, of course, the result is the same. If one loses, the other wins, but the difference is that what is your main goal? He personally, he said, does not like Kasparov. He wants Kasparov to lose for whatever reason. He didn't tell us, by the way, what he didn't like about Kasparov. Kasparov later went into politics, and I'm not going to go into all of this. The point is that the current election, which is an incredibly important election, of course, and the choice between how both American history, which way America will go, and also the world, a huge difference may be made by just a few votes. It seems, at least according to the polls, that it's pretty close. And this reminds me of how our sages say that a lot of times the world is in balance. Just the actions of a few people may change the balance. A person should be looking at him or herself as that one little action can change the whole balance of the world. What if it's exactly 50-50? And his or her action, a good deed or a sin, may tip the scales, kind of. In fact, this is probably the message of the two mountains, where half of the Jewish tribes were on one mountain and half on the other, and the blessings and the curses were pronounced. As the Torah tells us in Parshat Kitavo, closer to the end of the book of Dvarim, the book of Deuteronomy, it talks about these blessings and curses. And I mentioned, I once said a small word, a Dvar Torah, on that Parsha, and I said that there was a research by some scholars, sages, that wrote an article in a tradition journal that the specific divisions of 6 tribes and 6 tribes, the Torah tells us which 6 tribes will be on one mountain and which 6 tribes on the other. The specific division is optimal to have more or less 50% on each side. Maybe it was even exactly. There was basically maybe exact number of people on plus or minus 1 on each side of on the two mountains. One mountain is Gerizim. It has a lot of grass, a lot of plants. The other is just stones, right? So when the Levim, who were down below, would turn towards the mountain that is the blessed mountain, they would say the blessings. And when they would turn to the cursed mountain, the one that has no growing, they would say the curses. And the Jewish people divided more or less equally into two halves to emphasize this point that everything depends on just sometimes even one individual or a few individuals, their choices. So now, of course, the choices are also going to be decided probably by just certain number of people, not millions, maybe thousands. This already happened in the US a few times, in particular with younger Bush. The outcome of both elections was decided by a relatively few number of votes in one of the swing states at that time. I think the first time it was Florida, the second time it was Ohio, and those times these were the swing states. Whatever the case may be, now also out of 300 million people that live in America, and a large percentage of them are eligible to vote, and most of those who are eligible will vote, already, some of them already voted, right? Most of them live in states where very little difference is made by our votes in terms of at least the president who is elected. But there are a few thousand people whose decision to vote and for whom they're going to vote is going to make the difference. And of course, we know Hashem gives the freedom of choice to people, so which way America will go to a large extent may depend on people's choices. I don't know to what extent Hashem will just overrule kind of, or make people who want to vote a certain way make it easier for them to vote. I mean, to what extent Hashem will make this choice? Is it worthwhile to pray to Hashem that your favorite candidate will win. One might wonder, right? What about the freedom of choice, right? How could you pray to God that this or that candidate will win if God gives freedom of choice to people? But I think to a large extent, if these types of global events, Hashem could decide that, for whatever reason, this is the candidate that needs to win, and he will then do certain things to make those people not necessarily change their freedom of choice completely, but to make it easier for those who want to vote. I mean, there are all kinds of ways Hashem could do it. For instance, in make the people who would rather vote for the candidate that should lose, make them, for whatever reason, make them very difficult for them to go and vote or something like that. I mean, Hashem has many ways. So I don't believe it's forbidden to pray in terms of these things. It's not something we were told by the Talmud you're not supposed to pray for things that are that require a miracle. That you cannot pray for. For example, a person shouldn't pray that he after 40 days of pregnancy that the child will be this or that gender. Right? In theory, at least, you could actually check the gender of the child. Today it could be done with the ultrasound. Of course, in times of Talmud you couldn't do it with ultrasound, but it's the body of the child already exists there in the mother's womb. So to pray that you have, let's say, a boy or a girl would be basically praying for a miracle. What if it's already a boy there and you want a girl, or vice versa? So you cannot pray for those types of things. Certainly you cannot pray if you enter a city and you hear some sound of screaming. You cannot pray to God, please make it that it's not from my house, that the people screaming, calling out of anguish, that something terrible happened in that house. Make it that it's not going to be my house. That's a stupid prayer, right? It's already happened. It's either in your house or not in your house. You cannot pray like that. So I don't think that it's forbidden to pray that a certain candidate will win. As I said, even though there's freedom of choice, but if Hashem wants, he'll make a certain candidate win in ways that don't necessarily contradict the freedom of choice of individuals who want to vote for the other candidate. All right, there are a few ways to do it, and Hashem has more ways than we can think of. But my point is that it is at least partially decided by our choices. I don't know to what extent it's just the prayers that's going to help. Certainly, this is the type of thing that's given to the hands of people. And the democratic system we have in America, for better or for worse, democratic system has its minuses too, but the system of election of the government, at any rate, gives people a lot of power. We're the ones who are going to choose who is the next candidate. So I think in this particular election, there will be a lot of people who are not voting for a candidate, but voting against a candidate. Exactly like my math teacher told us with regards to Kasparov in his time, that there are many voters who are not necessarily fans of the person they're voting for, but they think that the other person is much, much worse. So they're voting for a person who's going to be better in their opinion, which is okay. This is perfectly fine. I don't agree with certain newspapers now that say if you're not sure, don't vote at all. I think a person should do the research and figure out which of the candidates in his or her opinion is worse, and then vote for the other candidate. In my opinion, in terms of what's going to happen to America in the next 4 years, in my humble opinion, Kamala Harris is a lot worse. Now, I'm not saying anything personal. I don't know what she is as a person. Obviously, I never met her and don't know much about her personal life. I'm talking about the party she represents, and in particular, the maybe 10% of her party or more that is radical left, and she will have to deliver to them too. She cannot, if they vote for her, they will ask for deliverance. They're not going to vote for her in the next election, let's say, if she's not going to do what they want. They're very loud, they're very clear of what they want, and the radical ideas of theirs are so horrid, there's nothing even to discuss. No, she may not be as radical, maybe, I don't know, maybe she really changed her mind about a lot of things. According to other radicals like Bernie Sanders, she didn't change her mind, she's just saying a lot of things in order to get elected. But let's say she is actually took more moderate positions on many things. At least that's what she seems to be saying on certain things. There's no different what she thinks right now. The point is she will have to deliver, or at least partially deliver, to the radical wing of what Democratic Party has become. And please subscribe to our channel.